Now, the first step toward understanding the cause of inflation is to recognize that it is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. It's always and everywhere a result of too much money, of a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than an output. Moreover, in the modern era, the important next step is to recognize that today governments control the quantity of money, so that as a result, inflation in the United States is made in Washington and nowhere else. Of course, no government any more than any one of us likes to take responsibility for bad things. We're all of us human. If something bad happens, it wasn't our fault. And the government is the same way. So it doesn't accept responsibility for inflation. If you listen to people in Washington talk, they will tell you that inflation is produced by greedy businessmen, or it's produced by grasping unions, or it's produced by spendthrift consumers, or maybe it's those terrible Arab sheiks who are producing it.
You may have noticed this week that your gas prices have gone up. I want to talk to you a little bit about why. A lot of it has to do with Vladimir Putin.
The problem we're facing with gas prices has two roots. First, the pandemic. The second root is Vladimir Putin.
And I want to tell you that I am planning to upgrade my COVID price gouging prevention act to make sure that it extends beyond the COVID crisis, because we cannot tolerate in any industry price gouging.
The reason we have inflation in the United States, or for that matter anywhere in the world, is because these pieces of paper and the accompanying book entries, or their counterparts in other nations, are growing more rapidly than the quantity of goods and services produced. The truth is, inflation is made in one place and one place only, here in Washington. This is the only place where there are presses like this that turn out these pieces of paper we call money. This is a place where the power resides to determine how rapidly the amount of money shall increase. I sit here and berate you and you as government officials and so on, but I understand very well that the real culprit are not the politicians, are not the central bankers, but it's I and my fellow citizens. I always say to people when I talk about this, if you want to know who's responsible for inflation, look in the mirror. It's not because of the way you spend your money. Inflation doesn't arise because you got consumers who are spendthrift. They've always been spendthrift. It doesn't arise because you've got the businessmen who are greedy. They've always been greedy. Inflation arises because we as citizens have been asking you as politicians to perform an impossible task. We've been asking you to spend somebody else's money on us, but not to spend our money on anybody else. Inflation is a tax which is imposed without representation and which nobody has to vote for. And of course, it's a marvelous tax from the point of view of a congressman trying to meet the demands of his constituents for more spending. You might think that if prices go up by 10%, and your income goes up by 10%, you're in the same position as you were before. But you're not. You're pushed up into higher brackets of the income tax, and on the average, if prices go up 10% and your income goes up 10%, your taxes will go up 15%. So that the Congress, again, is in a marvelous position. It can vote to lower tax rates when, in fact, taxes are going up. There's a lot of talk in the papers these days and the news these days about the president proposing a tax cut next year. That's pure fiction. Nobody is proposing a tax cut. These much publicized tax cuts of the past few years have not been tax cuts at all. Inflation has raised taxes, and the so-called tax cuts has given back a small part of that to the taxpayer. But the actual taxes the taxpayers have paid have gone up. as a result of the automatic effects of inflation. Anybody who has bought government securities in the past 10 years has paid the government for the privilege of lending to it. Anybody who has bought a long-term government bond and then redeemed it has gotten back an amount of money which has less purchasing power, less ability to buy goods and services than the sum he initially paid for the bond. And to add insult to injury, he's had to pay taxes on what they call interest. The real tax on the American people is not what you label taxes. It's total spending. If Congress spends $50 billion more than it takes in, if government spends $50 billion, who do you suppose pays that $50 billion?
Of course.
The Arab sheiks aren't paying it. Santa Claus isn't paying it. The Tooth Fairy isn't paying it. You and I, as taxpayers, are paying it indirectly through hidden taxation.
Dr.
And
Evans,
therefore, the crucial thing is to cut down total government spending from the point of view of inflation. From the point of view of productivity, some of the other measures you were talking about are far more important.
But if you can see that inflation and taxes are both part and parcel of the same thing, and if you cut spending...
They're not part and parcel of the same thing.
If you cut spending, but you take the money from them in one way or another, the average citizen,
Absolutely.
to finance the growth of government.
Absolutely.
So if you cut back the size of government, you can cut both their inflation and their taxes.
That's right.
I
am all in favor of that.
All right.
All I am saying is don't kid yourself into thinking that there is some painless way to do it. There just is not.
Inflation is just like alcoholism. In both cases, when you start drinking or when you start printing too much money, the good effects come first. The bad effects only come later. That's why, in both cases, there's a strong temptation to overdo it, to drink too much and to print too much money. When it comes to the cure, it's the other way around. When you stop drinking or when you stop printing money, the bad effects come first, and the good effects only come later. That's why it's so hard to persist with the cure.
Everybody talks against inflation, but what he means is that he wants the prices of the things he sells to go up and the prices of the things he buys to go down. But sooner or later, we come to the point where it will be politically profitable to end inflation. This is the point that I think you were making.
Suffering.
Where do you think what do you think the rate of inflation has to be, and judged by the experience of other countries, before we will be in that position, and when do you think that'll happen?
Well, the evidence says it's got to be over 20%. Now, you would think we could learn from others rather than have to repeat mistakes.
Apparently, nobody can learn from history.
But at the present time, we're going toward higher, not lower inflation.
It's very easy to say what the cure is. There's no problem how to stop inflation. That's the easiest thing in the world to say. In order to stop inflation, you have to have the government spend less and print less. That's the only way you're going to stop inflation. That's the one and only cure. But you know, the real problem isn't to know how to cure inflation. The real problem is to have the political will to do so.
In the United States, 4 times in the 20 years after 1957, we undertook the cure. But each time, we lacked the will to continue. As a result, we had all the bad effects and none of the good effects.
The only choice this country faces is whether we have temporary unemployment for a short period as a side effect of curing inflation, or whether we go into a period of still higher unemployment later on and have it to do all over again. That's the only choice we face. And when the public at large recognizes that, they will then elect people to Congress, a president to office, who is committed to less government spending and to less government printing of money. And until that happens, we will not cure inflation. What happened to all that noise? That's what would happen to inflation if we stopped letting the amount of money grow so rapidly. This is not a new idea. It's not a new cure. It's not a new problem. It's happened over and over again in history.